Ever felt frustrated being told PMS, heavy bleeding, and cramping are just normal parts of life? You are not alone. I loathed my monthly cycle for decades. That all changed when I earned 3 health coaching certifications, discovering something incredible. Your period is vital. It is an outward sign of your inner health, and it holds the key to unlocking your full potential. I've been there battling heavy, painful periods, and I turn them into cycles with minimal PMS and cramping. Today, I'm on a mission to share that information with you. Pour a cup of your favorite drink, get comfy, and grab your headphones as we embark on a candid and empowering journey of self-discovery. Together, we'll demystify menstrual cycles, explore cyclical living, delve into natural birth control, and guide parents through those crucial period talks with tweens and teens. It's time to break the taboo around menstruation and embrace the wisdom it holds. I'm your host, Heather Allmendinger, and this is the Embracing Flow podcast. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on Embracing Flow. Our guest today is an expert at embracing her flow. I'd like to introduce Jeanne Andrus, the Menopause Guru. Jeanne's been coaching, writing, and speaking about menopause for over a decade. She's the author of the internationally best-selling I Just Want to Be Me Again and the host of the podcast and the TV show Menopause Matters. Her approach to resolving menopause symptoms is widely esoteric, rooted in her own blend of coaching known as Menopause Mastery Coaching, bolstered by hypnotherapy, Reiki, yogic breathwork, and a love of science and anthropology. Thank you again for joining us today, Jeanne. It is an absolute pleasure to have you with us. How are you?
I am fantastic, and it's a pleasure to be here today with you, Heather. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
So you are the Menopause Guru.
I am.
How did you come up with that name?
So I had been studying and working with women around menopause for several years when the internet opened up a slew of new extensions. When I first started, you could get net, com, info, and biz, I believe. And menopause.com was obviously already taken, and anything that I started to take around that was, here, pay $15,000 for this and we'll give it to you, and things like that. And when the guru um, extension came out, several of my clients had already said, "You are such a fount of wisdom around this. It's like going to the mountain. It's like going to the guru who knows the information." So I embraced that, and I jumped on it and bought the domain, and basically I've used that ever since because my own world is about making sure women have the information they need. In our previous talk, we talked about how we barely got the information around our menstrual cycle when we were young. Well, that's a ton of information compared to what we get around menopause. And so I've made it my life's work, or the work of this second half of my life, to help women understand what they're going through, why they're going through it, and how they can make their experience of this not be hot flashes and itchiness and psycho. Uh, I was looking for memes the other day because I wanted to post something a little light on my Facebook page, and they were all just nasty. It was just like, how awful can this be? And it's not. It it doesn't have to be. And when you take care of yourself, when you understand what you're going through, yeah, you're going to have bad days. Guess what? You had bad days when you were 4, you had bad days when you were 17, and you had bad days when you were 37. Now you're gonna have bad days in your 40s and 50s and beyond. It's life, but it doesn't have to stay that way. It can be this glorious experience of the crowning of your womanhood, the amazing second half of your life. Um, So that's how I got got the name or the moniker, the Menopause Guru.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, our reproductive years can be challenging, but I as you've learned and as I've learned with the younger, it's a journey and it doesn't have to be horrible. How did you get into this field? Because I'm pretty sure this isn't what you started out with in your early years.
No, in my early years, I was an IT geek, actually. So, I was, I worked as a, database administrator for a Fortune 500 company, actually for several of them over the years, and, I was what they called a road warrior. I went from job to job. I'd stay at a job 3 to 6 months, and then I'd move to the next job, and I loved what I did. But when I was 48, I was depressed, I was angry, had low libido, very low libido, um, partly because my marriage was in trouble, and my marriage started to fall apart. And I didn't know why. I did not know this was perimenopause. The same mom who didn't tell me about my menstrual cycle didn't tell me about menopause either. What can I say? And nobody dragged me into a classroom when I was 38, like they did when I was in fourth and fifth grade. But I started losing pretty much everything because the anger got in the way of my job, it got in the way of my relationship, it got in the way of friendships. Um, I got divorced, I moved 1,800 miles. Um, it was a really, really tough time, and I didn't really realize what it was until several years later. But at the time, I all I knew was that if I kept on going the way I was going, I didn't have much of a life left. And so I decided that I would let it be the best thing that ever happened to me. And at that point, I was thinking mostly about the divorce and the move and the job change. But it turns out that I was thinking about menopause too, because I started getting healthy. I lost 80 pounds. I decided that I was going to be happy. I was going to do the things in my life that made me happy. I actually became an athlete for the first time in my life. I learned to run. I learned to be a gym rat. And along with losing the weight, I became really healthy and happy. And when I decided to come off the road because I was traveling all the time and it just wasn't working anymore, and I was living with my mom, she needed more help than she got with me being on the road 4 days a week. I decided I would become a personal trainer. And as a trainer, I saw the women that I worked with who were in this age group having the same issues that I had. And so I started to develop ways to work with them, ways to help them understand what was happening, ways to get healthy in spite of what was happening, weight gain and weird periods and mood swings and hot flashes. It didn't matter as long as they had a way to get healthier. And so I supplemented my training with health coaching and some life coaching principles, and then I just started adding healing modalities like Reiki and hypnotherapy and breathwork that all just keeps building on everything that I do so that women can come to me and find a solution to not being happy with their lives, not being happy with their bodies, and not being healthy
Yeah,
because truly health is the way that we get to 80 and 90 years happily. And,
agreed.
you can live to be 90, and if you're not walking, if you're not happy, if you're not able to be active and part of the life of the people around you, what are you doing here? And I know I know that sounds a little harsh, but we want to live to 90 or 80 or whatever our goal is. Mine is somewhere around 90. Um, we want to do it in a healthy way that allows us to be vibrant members of our community and vibrant members or vibrant participants in our own lives.
Yeah, I agree. It's that health. We've got to look at that, and that's got to be a central part because that is what interacts with how we transition into wise women. I call those that have transitioned wise women because you've gone through the puberty, the reproductive, and that transition. And we can learn so much from those that have transitioned into wise women.
Absolutely.
What
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so there's a bunch of things in that I want to kind of touch on. And one of them is the word crone, which has become a pejorative, a diss on older women, the crone, the hag. But crone comes from the same derivation as the word crown. And I see this as crowning of our womanhood. There's another thing that I want to talk about because it's specific to the topic you talk about, and that is the menstrual cycle. And now, as we start to see women embracing their menstrual cycle for their daughters, it's it's almost an oxymoron. Well, it's almost uh, a cliche to say to a young girl who has passed puberty, "Now you are a woman." And I want to throw that out because then when you hit menopause and you no longer have that period, are you not a woman?
That's a good point.
So let's not define womanhood in terms of our menstrual cycles. We are women because we are women.
Mhm.
And we're young women, we're teenage women, a little bit okay. I may be a little bit judgmental here, but yeah, a little bit crazy then.
Mhm.
And then we go through our reproductive years and maybe a little bit crazy then. And then we hit menopause. And yeah, we're a little bit crazy then. Crazy seems to be a theme, huh?
I it Yes, but you know what?
Yeah,
It's okay. If we embrace that craziness
yeah.
and we
It's
know when
amazing.
that bigger part of the crazy is going to show, we can share that with our partners and our partners can understand, okay, this is just a few days of crazy. She hasn't gone
Or
off the deep end.
or for menopause. So I talk a lot about partners, and I actually wrote a book for partners, spouses, um, designed more in mind for those whose spouse is a male, as opposed to those whose spouse is also going to go through this. Um, but men don't get it. They don't. They they don't know what our equipment is. I had to write a whole
Mhm.
chapter that said what's behind the VJ. Because
I love
they
it.
don't know that there's
No.
something beyond what they get into. And so they don't understand how our cycle is affecting us. And so they certainly don't understand how menopause and the change to our cycle affects us. And so it's part of that whole thing of saying you need to renegotiate. You need to renegotiate the relationship. You need to make that relationship about the people you are now, because he's changed and you've changed. And if you don't put yourselves back together in the same space, you break apart. It happened to me. And um, I tend to not forget that somebody wrote a review of my book, Where is Your Wife and What Have You Done with Her? It says, yeah. And then she admits that she didn't didn't make it through either. Who is she to tell us about it? Well, it is because I didn't make it through. And then I created a new relationship with my current husband, that it's so important to know that it's negotiating a relationship as you are today. And we go through our reproductive years, we have our kids. Sometimes that's a very difficult a place to stay connected and to know how the other person is changing, because you're so busy. You're just so busy being the parent and the worker and the spouse and the you have so many roles to play in the world, that when you get into perimenopause and into menopause, you want to reconnect. You want to reestablish that relationship.
Yep. And it does help. By staying connected and keeping that line of communication open on where you're at, where you're feeling, because it is an absolute mess being a parent, and trying to keep that relationship between you and your partner going, and the
Yeah.
partner feeling less than important in your life, and they're as important during parenthood as they were before parenthood, and they're just important after parenthood because those children leave the nest.
Oh, they do.
They leave the nest.
They sure do.
What are some of the things that our listeners can start picking up on to see if they're getting into those early perimenopause stages? I know you had mentioned allergies earlier and anxiety and emotionals, but what are some other things that just might be odd that they don't really associate with perimenopause that could be the beginning signs of perimenopause?
Um, so I like to think of it as sort of age-based, that at the age of about 38, as a woman, you should be aware that perimenopause is on its way, and that it is not. Let's be really, really, really clear. It is not a sign of being old. Perimenopause, menopause happen to women in their middle years. And the average age is 51 of completely going through perimenopause, having not had a period for a full year, which is the actual definition of menopause, which happens one day and forever after you're postmenopausal. But that's not old, especially in our culture today, with everything that we have. That is not an old person. That is a person who is in the prime of their lives and getting ready to move into what I see as really the second half of your adulthood, because 20 to 20 to 50 is 30 years, 50 to 80 is 30 years. That's exactly in the middle of that. And that's our current situation. So it's not old. You aren't getting old or not getting beyond good years. You've got plenty of time, but getting whole, and this is why in my in the second edition of my book, I put all the symptoms in, or all the symptoms I knew that at that point, because they keep finding new ones that are connected to our estrogen depletion. Um, but take a look at those symptoms. Get that full list, and for me, it's about 110 symptoms, which there's a site out there called 34 Symptoms. That's not the list.
Really?
That's
34? That's it?
yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
think
have
so.
100 I think I have 105, and that was with collapsing all forms of insomnia down to 1, and there are 14 of those. So, what we need to do is see where our body is changing. Are you having thyroid issues? Are you having insulin resistance? Is it harder to do your workouts or gain muscle if you are. Those are all signs that your hormones are starting to uh, drop in levels. That can happen anywhere from 38 to 43. Most women are sort of in perimenopause by the time they're in their mid 40s and experiencing significant symptoms in their late 40s to early 50s.
Yep. I looking back, I'm on the cusp of 46,
Uh-huh.
and I've noticed symptoms, and they started in the early 40s that I didn't realize was perimenopause.
Yeah. And that's the
And
problem is that you can go to your doctor and your doctor will say, "Oh." And if you don't go to your GYN, if you don't go to your gynecologist and you go to a specialist, they'll say, "Oh, menopause has nothing to do with this. Menopause has nothing to do with your changing migraines or your changing symptoms of PMS. It doesn't have anything to do with your joint aches, or your low back aches that aren't going away anymore." Um, they'll tell you that you strained your back or you have arthritis or all of these things because they didn't get the training they need to recognize the symptoms. So I talk a lot to my people about the things that doctors don't recognize. And the truth of the matter is, I say this all the time. If you go to your gynecologist and your gynecologist is also an OB, an obstetrician, and also treats female reproductive disorders like breast cancer or uterine cancer. They likely had one class that included menopause, one class, one semester. If you go to your primary care physician, they probably had one class in female reproductive stuff, and that included one, maybe two lectures on menopause. If you go to a specialist, not a GYN, not a primary care, but a rheumatologist or a gastroenterologist or a cardiologist or a neurologist, they may have had one lecture on issues that older women have, not even on menopause, but issues that older women have. And so the fact that your neurologist goes through and scares you to death about early onset Alzheimer's because you can't remember your best friend's name when you got to the restaurant, if you remembered where the restaurant was, and you walked in and you said, "Hi, Alice, Joanne, what is her name?" And you're stumbling over that stuff, or you walk through your house and you can't remember why you walked into a room and you're scared by all of this stuff. Your neurologist may not realize that there are places in your brain, because he's not a specialist, he or her, in how estrogen affects the brain, that there are places that estrogen has stopped helping your brain work. Things around multitasking and remembering nouns in particular. Or you go to your cardiologist or you go even worse to the emergency room and you get a 22-year-old resident. Okay, I shouldn't do this, but yeah, yes, I've had it happen. And you go into, he's just out of med school or an intern or a resident, and you're having heart palpitations. It's the middle of the night. They hook you up to the EKG and they go through a bunch of tests and they say, "Okay, you need to go to a cardiologist and you need to wear a Holter monitor for a month. And you've got all of these things going on and you've probably got a major cardiological problem." And they put you through this whole series of tests. And finally, somebody smart says to you, yeah, palpitations are a symptom of menopause, of perimenopause. So not only did you go through the expense and the time and the trouble, but you've been terrified
Yep.
for
You've
a
been
month.
traumatized.
So we don't have this knowledge of all of the things that can go wrong. Now, I'm not saying if you have palpitations, don't go to the doctor and talk about it, but also go to a doctor who said, when you say, you know, I'm 46, I'm 48. Could this be menopause? If he or she says to you, oh no, that never happens, go find a doctor who does. Recognize this is a major change for women, and it affects every cell of our bodies because every cell of our bodies has these estrogen receptors. And so systems aren't working the way they did. Interactions between hormones aren't working the way they did. Cortisol acts differently in your body. You have different feelings and different emotions because the chemicals that work on you and carry those emotional messages around your body don't work the same as they used to. Yes, I
That
can go on about
uh,
this
oh,
for
uh,
days.
oh, trust me, I'm the same way when it comes to the actual menstrual cycle and everything else. So I am right there with you. We didn't really talk about sleep, but you had mentioned about a sleep freebie. What do you have for us that we can pick up?
So, I have a PDF that you can get. Um, I believe you have the link to it right there, and
Yep,
you'll put
it
it
will
in the show notes. So I
absolutely.
don't have to remember like nouns, URLs just fly out of my head pretty quickly. But I have a freebie that I wrote about 5 tips for getting a better night's sleep tonight. These are things that are actionable tonight. You don't have to go out and buy new bedclothes. You don't have to buy new shades for your windows, but just things you can do right now. And when you get that, I will send you additional information about the next happening of my webinar called Help My Hair's on Fire and Other Reasons Why You Can't Sleep During Menopause.
Um,
I talk about hot flashes and talk about what's going on in your body. But I do that about once a month, and you'll get information about that if you just sign up for the freebie.
that sounds wonderful. I look forward to hearing, like, reading that, getting that freebie because it's going to help me. Because, like I said, I am in that perimenopause. I've noticed those hot flashes. Besides that freebie, where else can we find you or get information? Because I know you have books. You mentioned about the book for the partners, and I know when I introduced you, you had the "I Want to Be Me Again" book. Where can we find you? Where can we find these books? And yes, the links will be in the show notes.
Okay, so you can find me at menopause.guru. There is a contact form on the website. Send me an email. I'll get back to you. We can set up an appointment to talk and see what's going on with you directly. Um, MenopauseBooks.com has links to where I am currently selling my books. They are available on Amazon, but sometimes there are specials on my website, Menopause Books. And then menopause.guru is my main website. And that's where you can also find me on Facebook. Menopause Matters is the podcast. All things menopause all the time.
Well, there's a reason why they call you the menopause guru. Any final words to our listeners today?
I just think that my most important message to women going through this is that menopause is a gift. And in order to unwrap it, you need to support yourself. And if you need help with that, that's what people like me are out here for. But support yourself, and then you can unwrap this whole gift of menopause.
I agree. Thank you so much, Sean, for joining us today on Embracing Flow. thank you, listeners, so much for joining us today on Embracing Flow. We love to have you on here. Jeanne, I'm mind blown with all of this information. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Heather. It's been so much fun to talk to you.
All right. So, listeners, I hope you found this information interesting, and please reach out, look out the show notes, check out Jeanne and the information that she has. So, until next time, love hard, laugh often, and as always, my friends, be vividus.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Embracing Flow. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, submit a rating and review, and share it with your friends. Visit my website to receive your free PDF on 4 ways to decrease PMS. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and as always, be vividus.